Hey there, War Gamers, Justin the Art Painter here, and today we're going to talk about perspective. Now, we're going into the new year here, and when you guys are seeing this, it's already past the first of the year, but the topic is still important nonetheless, I think, and today we're going to be tackling the topic of perspective, a good hobby slash gaming perspective. I think it's an important thing to tackle as we go into the new year, and the new you, the new hobby, the new objectives, whatever it is you're working on. Perspective is an important thing to take into consideration, and I think it'd be good to start off today's T.A.P talk by discussing my perspectives on things, and this may not be what you were thinking when you first saw this. If you've made it the 40 seconds or whatever it is, video, minute, whatever it is, you may be like, what is he talking about? The T.A.P talk today is perspective. What's wrong with you, Justin? Perspective on what? Perspective on everything. But we're in this hobby community together. We paint models, we play games, and oftentimes our views don't line up with reality. Our perspectives are skewed, and I'll give you an example. So sometimes when I play games, I try really hard to be positive, to be aware of how my opponent feels, make sure they're having a good time, and sometimes I feel like it may come across condescending when I'm asking them questions, giving them the opportunity for takesy-backsies, like, did you know this guy does this? Would you have done this if you knew that? Okay, fix it. Do this. It's fine. Now you know. Let's just redo that quick dice roll. Do a thing. No big deal. Let's have fun. Do they take that the right way? But from my perspective, it feels like doing the right thing. Because it's not a tournament. Even if it was, I've played tournaments where in X-Wing and War Machine, I've literally been like had an opponent mess up, and they're like, X-Wing, for example, is a big one. Someone forgets to take an action on one of their ships when I played. I don't play anymore, but terminology may be a little bit off, but when I would play, they forget to take an action. They forgot to take a focus action or an evade action, and they pass their turn. And then it's my turn, and they're like, "Oh, I forgot." It's like, dude, just put your token on that figure. It's fine. It's not like you have to move the figure around. It's not like you missed something major. It's not like it was 4 turns ago that you needed to do this. You just passed your turn. It's been 30 seconds, right? Just fix it. It's cool. And I'm well within my rights as the opponent to be like, "No, you missed it. You forgot. Haha." I'm not going to do that. From my perspective, that's wrong. It's not the right thing to do. Now there's times when I'm that nice with an opponent and they aren't that nice in return. At that point, the door's closed. Now it's gone beyond the casual to the you want to play that way, so reciprocity is in order. But until that door has been closed, I'm usually pretty chill with people. Like, fix your thing. Let's go. I'd rather just have a good game, and the mistakes that cost the game are tactical mistakes and not I forgot to untap my mana, I forgot to say this or whatever. It's like, no, dude, just do your thing. Like in War Machine, I've had people where they're like, "Oh man, the last guy I did was my Warcaster, and I totally moved this one model and I meant to feat." And it's like, dude, just say you feated and fix the model you just moved. Like, you just caught it. It's, you had a misstep in order. It's fine, you fix it, right? And some people don't play that way, and that's fine. Play the way that makes you happy. But my goal is always to make sure that you are having a good time, and I'm having a good time, even in a competitive environment. And I've done reasonably well in X-Wing. I was pretty good at that. I placed in my first tournament for X-Wing. I placed top 4, third or fourth. I did pretty good with an unconventional list. The guy I lost to during the standard rounds is the guy I lost to for the event, or the finale, so or the top 4. So I guess I was 4th because I was bottom seat playing the top seat, and I lost to him twice. I lost to him. It was the only game I lost before we broke for top 4. But it was a good game, and he helped me out. He helped me learn, and that was great. But I think from the gaming perspective, sometimes our view on things can be a little skewed, right? So while I try and present myself as a beacon of like hobby happiness, that's not always the case, and yeah, you get frustrated with some people. Sometimes things happen, But that's not specifically what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when a game is going X direction, but you are perceiving it as Y. Your perspective is skewed, right? So, playing with Bob, and in our last battle report game, where the characters, each one that's alive, contributes like victory points, so to speak. However that works, right? And they hold objectives. And you get 3 characters, each one worth 1 like victory point type thing, and each one can hold objectives. Well, I had 2 characters, and I thought when I read the rules that you allocated 1, like token to each one to signify that they were, one of the operatives or whatever the term is in 40K for that mission. And he had 3. And then starting at a certain turn, you start scoring points based on how many characters are alive, and if those characters are holding the objective, and if you have more characters on it than the other person, you hold it, and that type of thing. And I was like, well, Bob, I started getting stressed out, and I was like, there's no way that this is going to reasonably be winnable, because if you can contest the middle, you can just hide your characters, and you have 3 to my 2, and you will constantly get more points than me, and just game's over. And I was really bummed out, and I was like, this mission's stupid, man. I don't get it. This is just, I don't understand. How is this fair? All right, well, Bob reread the scenario, right? A fresh perspective, so to speak, and he said, Justin, I think you might be interpreting this wrong. He's like, you can place those things on up to 3 characters, but if you only have 2, you allocate it to the first one and the second one, and then you can come back around and put another token on the other guy, so he's worth 2 points instead of 1. And I was like, okay, that makes more sense, so my characters were generating the same number as his, and it wasn't quite so frustrating, right? So there's that. Making sure that if something in the game is bothering you that way, you may have interpreted it wrong, and it's skewing your view of how the game's going to go. Have a conversation with someone, ask them, verify. Don't jump to those conclusions, right? But that's not the only thing that was going on in this particular game. At one point, I think I rolled really bad. I had a turn of just terrible rolls or something like that, right? And I was just bummed out, and I was just like, game, blah, blah, blah. And from my perspective, like, those dice rolls cast a shadow on the previous turns. Nothing else I had done mattered in my brain. This dice roll pulled me down. It was overwhelming weight of like failure, right? My perspective is I'm doing bad. This isn't going my way. I'm going to lose this game. All of these things. My perspective had these hobby gaming blinders on, and it forced me down this path, right? And then I finished my turn. I'm all agitated, and it's coming out. I don't want it to. Sometimes you don't mean for these things to happen, but your demeanor, your attitude, the way you carry yourself, sometimes you have to work hard to make sure that the negativity you're feeling doesn't come out. Like you have an aura of that coming out, and sometimes it's hard to control. Sometimes you have to work to be positive. I get on stream and I try and be positive all the time, but sometimes you have to work for that. And then Bob took his turn after my little derpy, not happy perspective, and then I was like, oh, okay, this wasn't as bad as I thought. Like, not only was Bob's turn not as good as he wanted, it was like, when you put it in perspective how bad mine was, but how much worse it was for him, it's like, my turn wasn't really that bad at all, but you get tunnel vision, and your perspective becomes skewed. Like, you start to feel negative, your positivity goes out, your demeanor, your attitude, your tone, all those things, they shift, even if you don't realize it. And that's kind of what today's Tap Talk is about, is that perspective you may have. And in this particular portion, we're talking about gaming. And making sure that when you're starting to feel that way, that you take a breath, just let it out, relax for a moment, and think and process. Is it as bad as you think it is? If it is as bad as you think it is, how bad is it for your opponent? Also, how are things from their perspective? Like, did you roll bad but you're still winning the game? Right? Are they rolling worse? Are you winning, you just had a bad turn? Are they winning and you had a bad turn and made it worse? Like, think about all the factors that that those external things, the objective truths about the game that is going on, to consider, and not just the one turn or the one handful of bad rolls. Like I had the other day, I had a game with Bob where I think I rolled 10 dice and all of them were a 3 or less, and I was like, are you kidding me? Statistically speaking, I should have got 6 or 7, somewhere in there, closer to 7, but 6 or 7 threes or better. How did I roll 10 dice and they're all 3s or less? Statistically improbable, right? That happens, and I was so flustered. But then you like, had to consider, okay, that was a really bad roll. Lost a bunch of models. But my cultists just rolled like 16 5+s out of 30 or something like that. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. Should have been 1/3, not 50%. So one handful of bad dice rolls, I feel like, has a negative, much more negative impact than the positive feeling of when you have a giant handful of good rolls. So make sure that when you feel your perspective, your scope starting to tighten in and hone in on, laser focus on this bad thing, that you do as I suggested. Take that breath and just let it out. Think about the objective nature of what's going on. All the other factors. Was this a bad roll? Was it actually a bad turn? Really? Was there anything good that happened? And then perhaps all those bad things were true. Perhaps you rolled bad, things didn't go your way, you couldn't pass an armor save, couldn't hit something, didn't make charge rolls, all these things were bad for you. How often do you win? How often does your opponent win? That's sometimes you have a bad game. And you don't want your negative experience or feeling to bring the other person down. And that's hard. That is a really hard thing to tackle, because we feel the way we feel. We are human. It is natural to not be happy when you lose. But for you to be able to win, the other guy has to lose, right? And occasionally, you're going to be the guy who loses the game. Make sure that you care about their experience too. That's important. Like, you can't win them all, but it's not your opponent's fault if things are necessarily going bad for you. Now, if they brought like a cheesy list or whatever, those are things that are beyond your control, and you could have a conversation ahead of time to alleviate that. But if you didn't know they were bringing, that's one thing. But how you conduct yourself, you can control that. So you can mitigate some of the cheese stuff by having that conversation ahead of time, obviously. But you can't control dice rolls. You can't control everything. You can bring a decent list. You can roll and make the best decisions you can. Roll those dice, do those things. But at the end of the day, win, lose, or draw, you have control of how you conduct yourself. How you feel is one thing, but how you harness that and try and channel it into something positive is up to you. So getting frustrated and throwing dice and throwing models and being salty, don't do that. And the saltiness, so to speak, that'll come through eventually. Sometimes you're just going to have a bad game and it'll come out. But try the best you can to mitigate that, And like I said before, consider how it feels from the other person's perspective. Are they having a good time? Is this the first time they've won a game? Those types of things. And then if you're like you're in a microscope right now, and we're focusing on the game, like we're just laser focused on just the game. That game, those dice rolls, that one thing that tipped the scales and made you not have fun, or made you feel like so bad, even though it might not actually be bad. If you start to zoom out, right, and perhaps in this game everything's going well, and something happened, and then it feels like you're not doing well when you are, and you can't focus on it. If you take a moment to throttle back, win, lose, or draw, from a different perspective, when you are looking at the tabletop gaming world, you are playing with toy soldiers in a fictional universe where your narrative, your models, your work is meshing with someone else's. And you could be anywhere else in the world right now. You could be at work. You could be at home doing nothing. But you have painted models. You're engaging with someone and being social. You're playing a game and rolling dice. And you're forging, hopefully, a narrative, right? So from that perspective, you're winning. Win, lose, or draw at the end of the game, fine. It is what it is. But if you change your focus and you throttle back and you go, okay, this is bugging me. I don't know what it is, but I don't feel good right now. What should I feel good about? What should make me feel positive? And you go, okay, I had some bad rolls. Game's not going my way, but I like playing the game, and I'm playing the game today. Could be working today, playing the game today. I could be doing yard work today, playing the game today. I'm at the shop, I'm with my friends. Let's talk about our hobby. Let's roll these dice and have a good time. So shift your scope, your perspective, and try and focus on things that make you feel good and feel positive. And don't place so much weight on the things that make you feel negative. On the balance, like the positive things should always outweigh the negatives, right? Even if there's just a huge number of negatives, maybe nothing's gone well for you in this game. Do your models look cool? Do you look cool with your opponent? Is your opponent being nice? Are you being nice? Are you doing what you want to be doing for the day? Or would you rather be doing something else? And if you enjoy playing minis, this is where you want to be, and this is your break from work and everyday life and your chores and all those things, sure, you might be losing the game, but you're doing something you want to do, So try and place those positive, uplifting things on the scale. If you're feeling negative, find things to place on that scale that offset that and make you feel good, because they're there. They are there. And that's why when I got into wargaming, and you guys have heard me complain on Twitch all the time because I get on there and I'm a negative Nancy, and it is what it is sometimes. But when I started Warhammer, I wasn't very good. I lost a bunch of games. One of the guys we played with was pretty cheesy. I don't play with him now. But because I lost all these games and I was feeling negative, I shifted my perspective. For better or worse now for me, my scope and my perspective of what was going to increase maximum happiness and positivity for me was to make sure that I was painting my models the best I could. And win, lose, or draw, I was determined to have some of the best looking models on the table at the shop. That was my goal. So when I sit down to play with someone, my models look good. I've put that effort, and we're forging a cool narrative, and I've done my part to make sure that regardless of how the dice rolls go, I have focused on what I can control and brought that to the table with me. I can't control how the dice rolls go. I can't control how your list is going to be built if we don't make an agreement ahead of time, that type of thing. But I have placed as much as I can on the positive side of that balance to make sure it offsets the negative. And sometimes you still get laser focused on the negative. That dice roll does get you in the heat of the moment, and it bogs you down, and it can be hard. But try and learn or adapt yourself to see the good in things, to put it in another perspective. As I had said before, you could be at work, could be at home doing chores, could be at school, could be doing all these things, but you're playing minis today. The tiny toy soldiers that you've painted and your opponent's painted, and you're playing a game, having fun, right? Hopefully having fun, that's the point. But you could be anywhere else in the world, you could be in the military, and you could be deployed somewhere you don't want to be, right? There's somebody right now that's sitting somewhere they don't want to be, and you get to play tiny little toy soldiers, You live in presumably if you're doing this, you're in a country that affords you a life that allows you to do these things. You have the freedoms to do these things. There's countries where, this may not be a hobby that is easily attainable. And they may have to work even harder to try and do any of it, because it is an expensive hobby. For you, if you're watching this, you're able to do it. Whether you're on a budget or you're not, you're able to do something that some people aren't, even if they want to. They don't have that luxury. So, and that's a little cliche, kind of like when parents you should finish your food because there's starving kids in this other country. That is true, but that's not exactly the way that I want to portray this. It's more of a perspective. That one handful of dice you throw that makes you feel bad, makes you feel like you're losing the game, that's really, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't try to overcome that, because you have all these positive things that are coming together for this one game that are allowing you to do this, that you should be thankful for. They should make you feel good. Okay, I'm at a shop today, I'm having a good time, I'm rolling these dice, I'm playing with my friend, we've got some cool painted models, let's have a good exchange, let's talk about the fluff, that type of thing. And one of the things you can do in addition to trying to just pile on all that positive stuff on the scales, like all these things are coming together and I should be happy because blah, all those things. If you are losing a game poorly and you're just, not having fun, try and reassess during that game if there's anything you can do to bring it back. So like when I play with Bob, sometimes we've had some games where the score is there's a disparity, and sometimes it gets to a point where it's like the game's over, checkmate, it's done, and Bob's played an extra turn, he's finished out his turn, something like that, and I've done similar things just to see what happens, but he's even said in the battle part, I can't win this, but kind of he's like, for the glory of Russ, I'm going to see how much damage I can do to you, can I get a moral victory? So if you're in a game where it's not just your one dice roll that's really just outweighed everything else for whatever reason, perhaps you really are just not having a good game that day. Try not to focus so much on the win-lose situation. Try not to focus on the score. If you can't control those anymore and there's nothing you can do, what you can control is what's going to make you happy, micro objectives. So, perhaps you're going to lose. You can't control it. The game is going to be over. Find some other mini objective that you can achieve and try that. Be like, okay, I'm going to try and assault this guy. I need to roll a 12 to get there, but this is a last-ditch effort, Hail Mary. Let's see if I can do it. Or whatever small objectives you can do that bring you happiness. That's the ultimate thing here is what's going to be fun for you. What do you want to do, right? So yes, you want to win the game. You want to play the mission, the scenario, do all those things. That all makes sense, right? But if the things are going going off the path and you can't focus on those anymore because the game's going to end, it's gotten too far askew for you to be able to realistically have an impact on the winning and losing aspect of it, but you still have another turn or two to play with your opponent, find goals that you can achieve. Role play a little. Talk a little like banter, like, oh, my HQ is going to come get you and he's going to charge you and he's going to issue a challenge, or goofy things like that. Have a good time. Don't let something small like losing at a game ruin your day. Try the best you can to be happy. You're playing a game, you're rolling dice, and have a good time. And try and help your opponent have a good time. They're winning. If this is the case, they're winning. Maybe it's their first win. Celebrate with them. Cheer and be excited, and hopefully they'll be excited when good things happen for you. And those are all hard things to tackle. I struggle with them myself because I get so bogged down in the fact that I play Warhammer or tabletop games maybe once a month, and then if I'm doing bad, it's like, I never get to play, I'm not going to get redemption, my brain starts to freak out, right? And it's like, you're in a shop, you're rolling dice, you're playing with cool painted models with a cool dude who's came out here to play with you, you're filming it, you're going to edit it, you're going to put it on YouTube. Be happy about this. Just don't get upset and be negative. Like, if Bob's winning the game or you're having a bad turn, you're still out here playing a game with someone who came here and wants to support what you do. You're still, playing with cool toy soldiers in a shop with a boss who lets you play at work. Like, do all these things and put them on that scale and put that against that bad turn, the bad dice roll, the bad game, and be like, all right, I should be happy. I'm playing a freaking game. I'm having a good time. I'm playing with tiny little toy soldiers. It's not serious. It's not serious. And I would even challenge you guys in the tournament scenario or scene that if you're not having fun playing in the tournament too, what are you doing? Find things that make it fun for you, because it shouldn't just be the winning and the losing. It should be the totality of it. The painting of the models, the coming together of your opponent, the socialization, the playing the best game you can, and keeping a positive attitude whether you're winning or losing, and helping your opponent feel like they should be, or that they're welcome and they're having a good time too. All those things should be important. So yeah, I challenge you guys to get into the tournament scene to change your perspective too, and make sure that you're having a good time in it. You're not so hyper focused that the winning or losing dictates fun. You should have fun actually being there in a room full of a bunch of dice rolling nerds. You should be excited. These are your people. This is in Mandalorian terms, this is your clan. This is the Warhammer clan. We're all here together doing what we love. Be happy, right? So at this point in today's Tap Talk, hopefully I've been slightly entertaining with the rambling. I don't know. Sometimes I get going and just, it is what it is. Currently these Tap Talks are me kind of just talking to myself, right? Because there's no one else in here. At some point, I'd love to have it to where there's another person sitting next to me. That would be pretty cool. Or like a podcast occasionally. It'd be nice to have a guest to talk to, bounce ideas off of. But currently, It's just me. And on that, let's shift our perspective for a moment. So we've talked about the perspective on tabletop gaming, hobby stuff, right? Or not hobby stuff, gaming stuff. So how you may view things, and you may feel negative or down, or let some small portion of the experience detract from your overall experience when it shouldn't, and how you might be able to try and shift perspective. And I challenge you guys to try that, whether you're casual or competitive, and try and make sure you're focusing on the good things, and not just the negative ones. But I also encourage you guys to sound off and let me know your experiences, how you deal with these things. What other tactics do you employ to help trick your brain or rewire your brain into being positive, because the negatives seem to outweigh it. One negative thing seems to outweigh a day's worth of positive stuff. You could have, have the best day at work, and then you come home and oops, dog knocked over the trash can, and that could ruin your day. That one thing. And it's like, yeah, it sucks. Clean it up and then celebrate because you had an amazing day. You got a raise, you got a promotion, whatever, that type of thing. What do you guys do? How do you approach it? So I encourage you guys to sign off in the comments below and let us know. Get a conversation going. But as we shift perspective here away from the gaming side of it, I'd like to focus on the hobby side for a bit. And I think that the same philosophies hold true. So you paint models, you want to do the best you can, you take it to a painting competition, you don't win. Does that make you feel bad? Or do you take that as a challenge to improve? How does your stance on it make you feel? And there was a time where I'd get a lot more frustrated if I didn't place in a painting competition. Not that I've placed in a whole lot anyway, but I would take it to the store and it's like I didn't place, yada yada. It would agitate me. And there's a variety of reasons why I don't go to the Games Workshop store to do competitive painting anymore. That's neither here nor there. It's a conversation for another day. There are things with that I think we're justified to be angry about, but the ultimate winning and losing, at that point it's like, all right, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I still painted some models. I still came in and hung out in a group of people that have similar interests, and it is what it is. So when I went to Nova this year, painted Sanguinius. Took it up there to the Capital Palette at the Nova convention, and was it Nova Open, I think technically is the name. And I didn't place. That was okay. My ultimate goal was realistic. My perspective was, I'm not worried about winning. From my perspective, I feel like I've said that a million times. I feel like we should have a ticker down here, like CinemaSins. It was like every time I say perspective, it goes ding, 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 ding. But my goal was not to win. My goal was to complete that model and enter it, and then let it ride. I achieved my goal. Just like I mentioned with tabletops, if all seems lost and there's nothing else you can control other than what you're doing, you can't win the game. Find things that you can do, right? Find many micro goals, many objectives that you can work towards, even if it's something small. In this case, I wanted to get a model, I wanted to enter it, and that was it. I wanted to see it in a case, take some photos, and let it ride. Small caveat, I also wanted some feedback from the judges, which didn't happen, but that's okay. There was a lot of people there and it happens, but I achieved that objective. I felt good about it. I didn't place, I didn't get the feedback, but my model was in a case for thousands of people at this convention to peruse at their leisure if they walk by the display cases and in the showroom, and there was a lot of entries. Some from people who are new to painting, some from some of the pros, and it's like just spanning the spectrum. And my model was in there, and I was like, not to sound conceited, but I'm like, I feel like this deserves to be here. And after having a conversation with Austin about my work before I went, he's like, you may not win. He's like, but you should enter. Like, he's like, you have what it takes to be in this field, and progress and learn, obviously. But like, if you are worried that you aren't worthy or good enough to be trying, that's not the case. Like, your work belongs here, right? And that's kind of the way he didn't word it that way, but that's kind of like what he was getting at. And I was like, okay. So I entered, and I was really nervous and whatnot, but I didn't wear it on my face. I was really just trying to mask the nervousness with like, I'm super excited, at the con. I was bebopping around and had my, shark fin hair and all that shit. But once it was in the case, not only was the guy there, the two people that helped me get it entered, that were signing me up and all that, impressed and excited, and just super excited to talk to me, which was a fun experience too. I think like one of the guys' names was Brian. I feel like, I don't know, whatever. We talked BattleTech too, but he was so excited. He kind of helped fudge the rules a little bit with me because my model was so tall with the plinth, and he's like, I think you're good on the height, and yada yada, and he helped me out. But once it was in the case, I walked over and I was like, that one over there, that, like, I'm glad I'm not next to that one, because it's like, it's way better. But right here next to the not like Golden Demon Winnie guy, I'm like, my model looks pretty good. Like, I feel like it's in a field of my peers, and we all have similar paint skills, some better, some worse. You know, we all have our own skill set, and we all have our own level of painting degree. But I was like, I'm happy with this. I took some photos of it, sent it to or probably shared it on Instagram, and then in the Garrison Discord, and sent it to the client, because the Sanguinis I paint is actually for wheels. And I was happy. So from my perspective, it wasn't about winning and losing. It was about the journey, right? And if I lost, which in a painting competition, can you really call it a loss if you still entered, right? Yes, technically, if you weren't among the handful that got picked, you didn't win, but like, you still entered. You still completed a piece. So perhaps you didn't get the trophy, but like, everything leading up to that is all wins, you know, if you were competing with yourself, and that's ultimately kind of the way it is, you know. So I achieved my goals. I had a good time. I don't know when I'll be able to enter another painting competition, because it's time's a thing. But perspective on the hobby. Do you have realistic expectations of yourself? Are you being too hard on yourself if you don't achieve an effect? Are you comparing yourself to other people? If you are, stop. If you see someone doing something you want to do, or you wish you could do, or they have talents that you feel you don't possess, use that as motivation. But don't keep comparing yourself to them constantly. Use that as motivation for you to aspire and grow to be somewhere. But when you compare your work, I highly encourage you to put a lot of emphasis on comparing today's work today's work to yesterday's work. You got to get the camera arms right? Today to yesterday. Are you a better painter today than you were yesterday? And from that perspective, I think you'll feel more positive, because there's always going to be someone out there who's worse than you, and there's always going to be someone out there who's better than you. That's just the way it is in life. But you're not competing with them, and they're not competing with you. You are competing with yourself, and that's the perspective, right? You change your view. You focus on something else. Are you working on models and you haven't quite got an effect, and you get frustrated? You didn't nail the model, perfectly the way you wanted, and that makes you feel down, and you feel like you failed. Perhaps, maybe you don't. Maybe this is all just rambling, and that's true. If none of this applies, then that's great. If you've got that mindset, but for some people it might not be the case. So you finish a piece, and it's not necessarily where you want it to be, and you're like, this is crap, blah blah blah. Is it really? Did you just not get an effect, but the model looks pretty good? You finished a model. Did you have fun painting? Did you learn something? You could have been at work. You could have been doing yard work. You could have been doing anything else in the world, but you were engaged in your hobby, right? So from that perspective, maybe you didn't achieve the effect, but all those, secondary, tertiary, whatever, things that came along with it were there. You got hobby time in, hopefully a release, a stress reliever, a cathartic experience. You learned something. You were engaging in creating a model and a narrative that should be fun for you. So perhaps you didn't nail an effect, but all these other things should be placed on that scale to offset your negative feeling and give you a fresh look, a fresh perspective. And honestly, when it comes to painting, if you didn't nail the effect, you still did get all those things. And as long as I said before, if you're a better painter today than you were yesterday, that's all you can ask for. Keep painting, keep applying those layers of paints and those brush strokes, and you will improve. And I realized, just like with tabletop gaming, that one turn of bad dice rolls can make you feel like the whole game and the whole experience was bad. Just like with painting, one miniature where you don't feel like you quite nailed it can make you feel like that miniature is bad, make you question what you do. But if you look at it objectively for a moment and try and offset those scales, you really can see that there's some positive light to all of this, probably more than you give credit for, and that you're allowing something negative, something poor that you've got in your laser sights to give you a feeling of negativity or unease, unhappiness. And that's why for today's Tap Talk, I've tried to just hammer in that it's all perspective and encourage you guys to shift that perspective when you're feeling down, when you're feeling negative, and try as hard as you can, no matter how hard it may be and how hard you have to keep working at it. Try to shift that perspective sometime. When you're having a bad day, shift it. Think about good stuff. When you're having a bad game, shift it. Think about the good stuff. When you're not quite nailing a figure, a painted effect, shift your perspective. Think about the good stuff, the positivity, and let that fill you up. Let that positive feeling fuel you. Don't give in to the dark side. Allow the light side of the force to fuel you and guide you. And perhaps it's not the best game you've ever played. Perhaps it's not the best model you ever played. But you did play a game. You did paint a model. And perhaps during the next game you'll have better dice rolls, so you won't make those same tactical mistakes. And perhaps next time you will have better brush strokes, thinner paint, better edge highlights, a better zenithal highlight or transition on your models. Perhaps you'll be a better gamer tomorrow than you were today. You'll be a better gamer tomorrow than you were today. And that is all you can focus on. And I think on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's Tap Talk. I think that was a good ending point. Sorry if I rambled too much. Hopefully this has gotten you guys through some hobby time today, whatever you've been working on paint-wise and whatnot. But as usual, here as we end up today's Tap Talk, rather, we have to shift our perspective. The totality of the majority of the video has been about making sure you view things in a better light, but now we have to shift from that to how to promote what it is that I do. So first and foremost, if you have not already, I encourage you guys to smash that subscribe button, ding the little bell to get alerts when I put up new content, and like this video. If you have any thoughts, concerns, critiques, or things you'd like to talk about in regards to things I've covered today or other topics you'd like to hear me ramble about, I encourage you to sound off in the comments below. If you'd like to help support what I do, I encourage you guys to check out deathrodesigns.com. Anything you guys do over there helps support what I do, and I love making content, painting models for you guys, so hopefully you guys will check that out. So there's a little coupon code somewhere down here. Get Amped 10 will save you 10% on any of your Death Designs purchases. And finally, if you'd like to be a super supporter, a super member of the T.A.P Garrison, the community that I'm trying to foster here on YouTube and Discord and Twitch, I encourage you guys to check out Patreon here. Any contributions you guys do over there, however small or large, really do help support what I do. And I'm not just taking the funds from that and buying snacks and hobby crack and energy drinks or sodas or anything like that. It really does help offset some of the expenses that come along with what I do, and I could not do the things I'm doing and chase the dreams that I'm trying to chase without the contributions of you guys. So for anyone out there who's watching this that is a Patreon supporter, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And for anyone who perhaps doesn't want to sign up for some other subscription thing, simply by watching these videos, simply by being a member of our Discord group, simply by commenting and hanging out during Twitch, just being an awesome supportive viewer, is worth at least equal to any monetary contribution that anyone else does. So I don't want anyone to think that I value someone spending money over someone who doesn't. I value all of you, and I really do appreciate all that you do for me, and I appreciate you guys trying to help me chase the dream that I want to chase. I enjoy this hobby. I enjoy rambling and talking about it with you guys. I enjoy trying to bridge the gap between gaming and hobbying and like the real world, and talking about things that you can take and apply to that. Today we talked about perspective and focusing on the good over the bad, and the underlying theme has been gaming and hobby stuff, but you really can use that in the real world too. We just didn't really talk about it. You may be having a bad day at work, but shift your perspective, and you're making money. Hopefully when you get home you'll be able to relax, paint some models, play some games, some tabletops or some video games, see your significant other, pat your little dog on the head, or scratch your little cat behind the ears, or feed your reptile, whatever you've got. There are things to focus on and be positive about. And while today's video didn't necessarily talk about them, I think that the topics we cover in our Tap Talks have an underlying theme that is present in our hobby lives as well as our real lives. So, but on that note, folks, thank you again for hanging out with me this long. I hope you guys have been getting some awesome hobby progress done. If you've got some Instagram photos of what you've been working on, share those in the comments below. But I think we're going to sign off today. As always, keep painting those models, keep rolling those dice, and I will catch you guys next time.